Hello, beautiful souls. I am Kara Avery, and I am welcoming you to Rooted and Rising podcast, where we're going to have conversations on love, growth, and purpose. And I'm so excited that you are here to join me on this journey. We are going to be traveling through transformation and elevation. What does that journey look like? What can you learn? What can you experience while you're having this deep dive into discovery on what's within your roots, right? And how do we continue to rise together, which I think is so important. This series is going to start with finding my voice. A lot of the conversations that we'll begin to have will be the discovery in what the voice is and how did I lose mine, right? This has been a labor of love. This has been a space where I really wanted to develop a lot more, and I wanted to be able to ensure that I was bringing something forward that was going to be tangible and valuable that you can't always do, right? So I had to just jump headfirst in and say, you know what? I'm going to start with sharing my story. So I'm so excited to have you here. I hope that you will enjoy some of the conversations that I am sharing with you and some of the great individuals that I will have joining me for conversations on healing, on growth, and on love. Hello, beautiful souls. I am Kara Avery, and I am the host and creator of Rooted and Rising podcast. And I'm so glad that you are here to join me for this first episode around surviving. I think that with a lot of these conversations, for myself, my journey really began around understanding that I had been in survival mode and how long I had been in survival mode. Because I think that helped me to understand a little bit more around beginning to dig into my roots, beginning to really unearth some of the old patterns and some of the old belief systems that I had running for years and years and years, just to get to a more stable way of being. One of the things that I really wanted to share with you all is that there's no perfect way to begin this journey. You start where you start. I think that I really had a lot of shifts and changes and transformations in my life. And along this journey, I was able to find books to support me, individuals, and I just really had to do a lot of self-learning until I found the things that really resonated with me the most. So I hope that this conversation will resonate with you. I hope that you'll find so much value in it as we begin to talk about survival mode. Now, what is survival mode? It's really just running on in your fight or flight. For me, it was really just staying in flight or flight for an extremely long period of time that I didn't really know was happening. I had a baby at 18 years of age, and this is a very unique story, and I think that it's, every superhero has its origin story where things really transition and things began. And so I feel like that with me, I think that my origin story really began simultaneously on one day. That was February 29th of 2000. That was the day that my father passed away, and that's also the same day that I found out I was going to have a baby and become a mother. And everything in my life changed. And up until that point, you're living your normal kind of like teenage life and teenage experiences. I had some that were a little bit more challenging than others. I was a kid that kind of moved around a lot. I definitely felt at times that, I didn't see myself always belonging. And so I was trying to find my groove, my group of people. One of the things that I leaned heavily on in my youth was that I was a part of the Bible club. Come to think of it, I was in the Bible club in high school, which is like so funny. Shout out to Mr. Hilmer, because he was the teacher. He was our art teacher, and I had a huge passion for art. And he was actually like, I lead the Bible club. You should come. And I'm like, the Bible club? And I went, and it was so good for me. And it was actually in a time period where I really, I needed that grounding. And I think that source and the universe, or, all of the multitude of names, always had a presence in my world, even at like a young adolescent age. I had grown up in the church. I'd been in, vacation Bible school. I grew up in, the Episcopal and Catholic church. So I always had like a really, really stable foundation. But once you get into just changes and transitions in life, you lose a little bit of that. And especially when you get to high school, and unless you're in like a religious-based or faith-based school system, you're like, who's going to go to Bible club? But I did, and it was great. And I was also in a very tumultuous and toxic and abusive relationship as a teenager. And I think that also having some of these outlets like sports, having some of the clubs to participate in really helped me, because I was just looking for a way to connect outside of the environment that I was really in. And I was really trying to just find out who I was and what I was passionate about, or what really resonated with me. And during that time, I loved to perform. So I loved to dance. I loved to perform. I loved to just really be front and center. And I think that's important to share in this journey, because when I went through some of the changes and transitions in life, and some of the things that, as my origin story began, I basically let that version of me die. So I always say that the version of who I thought I was going to be died on the same day that my father did. And it was really hard, because I felt like in that day, I lost one of the most important people. My father had a heart attack while he was driving, so it was very sudden. So I lost one of the most important people in my world. I also became a mother that day, or knew I was going to become a mother that day. So everything about my future plans and who I was going to be all changed in one day, at 18, at 17 years old. And so I don't think that people really, I don't think that you just recover from something like that immediately, and you don't really acknowledge how it may or may not be making you feel, and what you have to program yourself to believe to move ahead of that. And after that situation came so much more, right? I had a significant amount of shame and disappointment that I felt from my family. My mother hid me from my family at that time. She did not want anyone to know that I was pregnant. So I was in another state, and it was really tough. But I found my way. And I think that it's important to understand, as I've gone back, what did those moments create in my future state, right? What happened to me at this age that was a trickle from what happened in that moment? And how do I go back and nurture that version of me to support me in my adult healing, right? And so some of the things that I always did was I journaled. And I think that is so important to write as much as you can. And I've always written for years, just to really understand some of my emotions. It's also always been my safe space, because I was one of those girls that grew up with the diary with the lock on it. As soon as I was just like, this is where I can keep all my secrets. This is where I can talk about the boys that I like. This is where I can, talk about the variety of experiences that I'm having and things that I just didn't want to share with other people. And I didn't necessarily have a lot of trust either. And I think me not having a lot of trust for individuals also created a lot of strain in creating relationships with people, friendships, close relationships, and dating. It just became where I did a self-isolation in a certain mechanism. And so that's also a place where I've had to really dig into some of those roots to understand that I can find sisterhood, I can find friendships, I can find healthy and thriving and loving relationships, but I've also got to be willing. And that takes a multitude of healing. And we're going to talk about all of that as we embark on this journey, right? But in my origin story, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to make sure that my daughter was provided for and that she did not have to feel the pains of not having two parents that were supportive, because I knew immediately that her father was not the person that I wanted to be with. And so I decided that I knew that the responsibility was going to be on me. And so I worked and worked and worked. And I also tried a lot of different things. I worked at a kids store, which I'm going to swing back to that because I worked at this store called Desert Brats it's in Las Vegas, but I can't really remember which location or which casino it was in, but it was a high-end children's store. And I have a couple of amazing people that I met that actually I had a huge full circle moment that I will share with you guys in a few episodes from now. But children's stores, I worked in the dental field, and I was just constantly trying to prove myself, trying to prove my worth, trying to prove my value, because I felt probably internally that I had failed everyone because I was going to have this baby. And my family was just really not supportive of that. And so I just felt that I needed to prove everyone wrong. And in that, I was just continually stacking on top of my nervous system, at times continuing to diminish myself and how I felt about situations, how I felt about people, where I felt, I just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I just shrank my voice smaller and smaller and smaller. I remember working at a casino, and I got a position in the executive offices, and I go in and I'm all dressed up and fancy and I'm doing my executive assistant thing. And a man made a really inappropriate comment to me. And I told another coworker, I said, he asked me something about my body and it made me really uncomfortable. Well, probably 2 days later, they moved me from the executive offices into the engineering in the basement. So they transferred me to be a dispatcher for engineering and working in the basement of the casino. And it was really uncomfortable. It wasn't where I wanted to be. And I believed that I did something wrong. And so I never spoke up for myself. I never said anything. And that was a continual pattern. So now I am not only working against this internal dialogue, but I'm also trying to achieve and be everything that I feel like everyone else thinks that I am. And I'm not. And I know that a lot of people have experienced that, where they're just like, they're trying to meet family expectations. They're trying to meet expectations of friends, maybe siblings. You feel like you need to be at the same level as them. You need to achieve the same thing as them friends, people that you encounter in life, right? Everyone's trying to keep up with the Joneses nowadays. So if you are in a circle of friends and they have this bag or they're doing this thing or they have this car, like people are still trying to keep up with those ideologies. Even look at how we do all of the changes and mutilations and BBLs and all of these different things to our bodies. And we're losing the core essence and originality of who we really are, of who God intended us to be. And so along this whole time, I'm just really functioning in survival mode. I really don't know how to rest. I don't know how to take any time for myself. And this carried on for 20 or so years, right? This is something that stayed in my psyche, in my system for years until I would have moments where I would just kind of like either get sick or if I didn't slow down, there was always going to be some sort of caveat to slow me down. Now, there was beauty in parts of that, right? There was also some beauty because I've always been very, very determined. I've always been very determined to have more, to be more, and to do more. But I realized that I was doing that from an unhealthy place. I wasn't doing that from a place of love for myself. I wasn't making those actions from a place of thriving. And I think that it's so important to begin to recognize where you are working from. Am I working from a place of love and understanding and self-acceptance of who I am? Or am I working from something external? Am I trying to prove something to someone else, right? Am I doing this because I want a certain level of validation from someone else that's external to me? And when you can begin to have that level of awareness with yourself, really sit with yourself. A lot of times, I'm a huge advocate of what everyone is talking about, which is shadow work, right? Really digging into the places, the dark, deep places within yourself. And this is a continual thing, y'all. It's not oh, I did all my shadow work, I'm healed, and 2 years later, you right where you need to be. This is continual. You're going to come, it's going to be 2 years, and you're good, and something's going to trigger you, and something's going to happen, and you're going to have to flip right back into it, and then go back in and do some more shadow work to see what you needed to unearth, to see what was left, to see where you still needed to do healing. I have read some of my journal entries and I tell you, I'm just like, man, I did not get the lesson. Why did I not get the lesson? Like, I literally was just looking at my journal and I have an entry in there from January of this year. And it's probably the same, similar to an entry that I wrote a week ago. And the messaging was still the same. And so I feel like that our angels, our guides, our ancestors, they're always around us, supporting us and trying to continually give us the same messages. But we have to be open. We have to be willing and we have to be ready to take the necessary steps. And that takes a lot of courage and that takes a lot of awareness. And so give yourself grace, because I think that one thing that's been important to me at this leg of my journey is continually giving myself grace in this pathway. So there's a few things that I want to ensure that you take away from this conversation. Number one, making sure that you're writing and you're journaling and you're becoming aware of what's deep down within you. What is your core belief system? What are the things that you need to understand about yourself? Even on a baseline, right? Because as you begin to do that, it opens it up to other aspects. It's kind of like, it's always understood that Pandora's box was a bad thing, but it really opened up all of the things that we probably needed to see, right? So opening up your own Pandora's box and saying, what's in here? What's hiding beneath me? What's underneath the surface that is driving some of my decisions, that's driving some of my belief system, that's hindering me in some of my relationships? Even starting to think about, why am I showing up in work in the way that I am? Why do I feel exhausted so often? I think that it's so important to understand that this journey is the journey of the self. This is the journey for you. And it is not for anyone else. It is not for your family. It is not for your friends, because when you focus on you and your own internal and personal healing, your environment shifts. Everything around you shifts. Your friendships change. Your family members change. But you are normally the catalyst for that, because your perspective can shift and your energy shifts. And we don't know what that looks like in our world, right? We're always talking about being the change that we want to see. And I think that that's such an impactful statement, because it always begins with one. It always begins with one person being willing to look deeper within themselves to understand more about where they are infusing themselves with love. And when I was in this state of survival mode, I was not in a state of love. I was definitely continuing to imprison myself, right? And make myself smaller and trying to make this big version of Kara fit into a really, really small box that I thought was appropriate. I thought I needed to have this job. I thought I needed to have this car. I thought I needed to be doing these things. I thought there was like this direct way that I needed to like kind of cookie cutter and make things happen. And then there's like these age milestones where like, oh, I'm getting to be this age, and so I need to be doing this thing because I'm going to have to get to retirement at this point. And just all of the narratives, all of the things that we tell ourselves to really that aren't necessarily true, because we're creating these pathways, we're creating this pace for ourselves. Secondary to that is get you a shadow work journal. Get you a shadow work journal so that you can begin to have some guidance while you're writing some of the things that you're writing. And I'll make sure to link it in some of the documentation, but make sure you get a shadow work journal so that you can begin to understand more about yourself while you are investigating and discovering why you have been existing in survival mode. I would say be as honest and transparent as you can, and then tap in with some of the people that are around you. I know that it can be challenging to talk and take in feedback, but one of the things that I've always strived to do is have great people around me that I could get honest feedback from. Transparency and honesty are two core values for me. And it's really important for me to have that in my friendships. If we cannot be honest with each other, we don't need to be friends. So it's really important to have some people around you that you can actually ask for some honest feedback and say, hey, was I a little bit abrasive? Or like, do I come off this way? Or do you think that there's anything that you see in me on a day-to-day basis that you think could be that I may need to shift? And use that as part of your discovery. Don't make that the exact point of reference, because they're only seeing you in a certain light. But at least make it a part of your hypothesis when you're doing the discovery work on who you want to be and who you are in your current version, and some of the different perspectives that are there and available. I think that the secondary thing, or the third thing that I would suggest, would be to begin to find books that resonate with you the most. Find the books that really lean into your heart. I read The Road Less Traveled. I read The Alchemist. I found a lot of solace in some of the text where I could see myself in different stories. So whether you are checking out a podcast, whether you are reading a book, make sure that you are expanding your mind and beginning to feed your mind with new information to help shift some of the programming that you have in there currently. I think that that's really one of the biggest things that I began to do. Abraham Hicks is really big in my world. I've listened to a lot of her sessions, and I just began to listen. I just began to hear and see what other information was available to me. So as you embark on this journey of understanding and discovering why and how you are in survival mode, I hope that it's so important that you begin to really give that time to yourself. You're worth it. You're worth the discovery. You're worth understanding so much more about yourself. You're worth your own healing. And so I hope that you'll continue to stay tuned as we talk about more great topics like this. All right, peace and blessings, y'all.